VikesNow, we are back, and maybe the Vikings are too. I'm Dustin Baker. We're here to chat about the Week 4 dub in Charlotte over the Panthers. The Vikings won 21-13 in a game that felt a lot like the Miami Dolphins game last year. If you watch the show, I'm sure you watch every Vikings game, and you'll recall last year against the Dolphins, that was a game that was like, yeah, man, they just don't have it today. And then with one play, I believe it was a Dalvin Cook touchdown, it was kind of like, oh, this thing's never in doubt, and somewhat cruised the rest of the way. There was some anxiety down the stretch in the fourth quarter a little bit because we thought these winless Vikings are going to find a way to choke it away, but they didn't. They looked like the 2022 Vikings in the second half of the game. So there are signs of life from this team. It doesn't really get scripted any more difficult than the Super Bowl champion Chiefs and Taylor Swift. Patrick Mahomes coming to Minneapolis next Sunday at 3:25 p.m. But you can't change the schedule, and I guess we should just count our lucky stars that it is a home game, which should give you a glimmer of hope that they'll either win the thing or look competent along the way. But let's get into some details of this Vikings triumph over the Panthers. First of all, the defense. Now, I know you're going to hear disclaimers out the wazoo from me on the show today, from others on Twitter, and basically your pals, social media, whichever venue. It was the Panthers' offense. Yeah, I get it. But Bryce Young, who was the first overall pick, the guy's supposed to be good, and for a day, he looked decent. He didn't look that great. What I was telling you guys and gals about, it probably would have been a more difficult task at this point to play Andy Dalton. I think a lot of those blitzes got home on Bryce Young because, boom, he's a rookie. But the defense on the whole, I don't care if Nathan Peterman was their quarterback. The defense looked good from the Vikings, and that is a sustainable building block for what the Brian Flores-led defense is trying to achieve. The Vikings surrendered 232 yards on defense, 0 touchdowns, with 5 sacks and a touchdown of their own. That's marvelous. You really couldn't ask for more. The only real gaffe in the game, the ginormous one, was the Kirk Cousins pick six, 99 yards. He's good for those about once every year and a half, and it just happened to happen yesterday against the Panthers. And that was after Jefferson scored, but a holding call negated the damn thing, and it felt like, here we go. Every Vikings game this year is the same. They look great. They turn the ball over. They don't look great. Oh, they might come back and win. Oh, nope, they didn't. We got away with not having that occur against the Panthers. So I need to call out the defense. A unit that will presumably get better as Brian Flores gets more comfortable in his position as defensive coordinator. It looked great. It looked like the first half defense against the Buccaneers. I was so excited that game, especially when I still thought they were going to win the Week 1 game in the first half because the Flores defense was doing the thing. But then Baker Mayfield and his pals showed up in the second half and just started dinking and dunking the Vikings to death, and they couldn't stop it. That DJ Wonnum moment. So the Harrison Smith forced fumble sack, DJ Wonnum scooping it up, showing his 4.73 40-yard dash speed for a touchdown. My homie Yannick Eckhart tweeted this as well. But if the Vikings turn this season around into something relevant and meaningful and get to the playoffs or even win the damn division, that DJ Wonnum moment will be the smoking gun, the spark, the catalyst that changed everything. I'll give Wonnum the credit for it because of the scoop and score and finishing off for a touchdown, but it really started with Harrison Smith. And if we're able to look back in 2 months and say, God, these Vikings, they're 9-6 or something like that, we can thank that moment. And it would be fitting that it was Harrison Smith who kickstarted everything because that game wasn't necessarily dead in the water, but it absolutely needed some sort of special teams touchdown or defensive touchdown the way the offense was just dinking around. Also, Marcus Davenport, he took a lot of heat. I don't know if he saw any of it. I don't know if he's an avid social media user. But some of you guys and you gals couldn't get over the fact that the guy was injured and therefore was a horrible signing. Quasies can't cook. And for the life of me, I could not understand why this guy wasn't given a little grace. He was injured. He wasn't refusing to play. He wasn't, a bad apple. He was hurt. Now he's not hurt. And he got on the field and he showed precisely the vision that was intact when he was signed. He caused havoc. He had this, I think it was a sack. He had a tackle for loss. He had multiple pressures. So Marcus Davenport on the field alongside Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter's always got a running mate, whether it's Everson Griffin or Zadarius Smith. This was how it was supposed to happen in the first 3 games, but the guy had a nagging ankle injury from something that happened at the end of the summer, and it took him a little bit to get going. Why were we so impatient? It happens. This is football. Dudes get hurt. Are you anti-Kene Nwangu because he's on IR? There was so much hatred, and I just couldn't get it in my skull. Like, what if he comes back and he's good? And that's exactly what he did, at least for a game against the Panthers. So if you're one of those Davenport truthers, God love you. Just be a little patient when it comes to injuries. Now, if he was just refusing to play because he was holding out or he was a prick, yeah, I'd be right there with you. But there was no reason to believe that he was headstrong. He was just nursing an injury. But on the whole, defensively, this is the way it's supposed to work. Injuries will always arise, but so long as Davenport is healthy from here on out, playing, 80% of the games the rest of the way, the defense will feel like this. The downgrade from Davenport to Patrick Jones or Davenport to the usual version of DJ Wanham when he's not scoring touchdowns is pretty damn vast. And so Davenport gets in there, a former first-rounder from the 2018 NFL Draft. He made an impact. Boom. The next thing I want to get to is the vintage aspect of Harrison Smith's performance. This man is 34 years old. He looked like 2015 Harrison Smith in terms of his speed, his impact, 3 sacks, 14 tackles, and 1 forced fumble. Again, my homie Yannick Eckhart tweeted that with that stat line, he was the first player in NFL history ever to do that. So go figure, it was the Swiss Army knife in Harrison Smith. And the Vikings would be 0-4 if Harrison Smith was on the injury report, or if he retired, or if he went to another team this last offseason. The Vikings would be an 0-4 hole because he almost single-handedly willed that defense to thwart any type of Bryce Young-led attack that was going to be on display. So kudos to Harrison Smith. You caused the Vikings to win, and it might be thanks to you that they turned this season around into something quasi-memorable. We shall see. Another interesting factoid that I'm sure is not lost on any of you is that this was the first underwhelming game from Kirk Cousins of this season, and then the Vikings won. You can't make this stuff up. The guy was a baller in the first 3 weeks, led the NFL in yards, touchdowns, was about 9th to 10th, the analytics efficiency metrics, EPA per play, DVOA, I guess QBR you can throw in there a little bit. He was about the 9th or 10th best quarterback through the first 3 weeks. And then those numbers this morning dipped because Cousins wasn't very good yesterday. The first interception was his fault, and I don't know what the heck happened on the second balloon ball interception. It was not a great game for Kirk, but the Vikings won anyway. So it's such a mind-bending thing to undertake. Usually when the quarterback is cooking and throwing 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, that's when your team is supposed to be winning. It's when you fire up this 189 yards, 2 picks, 2 touchdowns, those are the games you lose. And somehow these Vikings find the way to do the opposite. They win when Kirk is just Kirk, and when Kirk is on fire, that's when the rest of the mistakes show up. It's obtuse. Yeah, if you figure it out, you let me know. But in that same vein, Jordan Addison had his first non-existent quiet rookie game of the year, and then they won in that too. So without 2 mighty contributors, typically from the first 3 weeks, especially Cousins because he's the quarterback, Addison was a big nothing burger, and the team still found a way to win. So I guess that's a compliment. They should be able to do both at the same time in that when Cousins has a usual Cousins game or Addison scores a touchdown, the wins should pile into the box score, but I don't know. This team is doing it the inverse. Hopefully everything evens out so they can have all the good things at once instead of all this disjointed stuff. A couple more things that I want to mention. Signs of life from your Minnesota Vikings is the Cam Akers impact. Cam Akers took over for Dalvin Cook at Florida State in 2018. Cam Akers is gradually taking over for Dalvin Cook for the 2023 Vikings. Akers had 7 touches, 5 rushes, 2 receptions for 51 yards, which you span that over like a 20-touch load, the guy's going to be a Pro Bowler. Of course, he probably won't end up being a Pro Bowler, but he had 7.28 yards per touch yesterday, which was the most by a Vikings running back in his first game with the team since Adrian Peterson in 2007. So I think this bodes well. A, it makes the Kwesi trade look smart, at least for a game. It was worth it. Kwesi takes a lot of these little flyers on Ross Blacklock, Jalen Rager, and basically got Akers for free. And I have a feeling by the time you and I are discussing this topic on the show, December blah, 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 hopefully the Vikings are relevant, it'll probably be a true committee or equity in the running back load between Madison and Akers, because they basically have gone back to what they always know. Dalvin Cook and Cam Akers have similar styles. Dalvin Cook will probably always remain a better running back per his resume, although he's having a hard time in New York right now. But this is the way that Vikings football has been constructed. This is the way the offense was last year. You have the bowling ball type runner in Madison, who also looked good yesterday. And then you have the dude who has burst in Cam Akers. So it's the salt and pepper effect. And they could have found it in Ty Chandler, but they went with a surer commodity in Akers, so you should be extremely excited about Akers. I'm sure you felt it when he touched the ball. It felt like a change of pace, like Dalvin Jr. from Pick Your Favorite Dalvin season. And this is what we know. Have two good running backs, and I think the only difference this time is by the time this thing hopefully starts humming with a couple more wins, Akers and Madison should have somewhat similar touches per game. Because, I mean, there's a case to be made that Akers is even a better running back than Madison, especially per his draft stock from the 2020 NFL Draft. All right, here's my final two closing arguments about the signs of life from these Vikings. And I said this on the show 2 weeks ago. I wrote an article about it on VikingsTerritory.com. The Vikings need to be 4-4 by Halloween. Thereafter, after Halloween, after all the candy, the schedule really starts to get lighter. You don't have Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs or the 49ers or the Eagles or Justin Herbert, who looked flawless last week. You've got real average teams, in my opinion, in the Saints, Falcons, Broncos, Bears, Raiders. If you can get to 4-4 by Halloween, you're going to look up and be like, holy shit, these 5 games are ones the Vikings should actually go 4-1 or 3-2. And if you have that 4-4 record at that time, then as you know, you get past the hump of Thanksgiving and towards Christmas, the Vikings could be in the playoff standings. Now, to effectuate 4-4 by Halloween, my little mantra is they have to win 3 out of the next 4. Yikes. They're playing the Chiefs. They're playing the Bears, who I just have a terribly cynical feeling the Bears won't have won a game in, I think the last win was October 24th. I have a terribly cynical feeling at Soldier Field they're going to win their first one against the Vikings. I got to see how the Vikings play against the Chiefs. Maybe the Bears just beat the Commanders this Thursday and my little paranoia is done. But out of the next 4 games, to get to 500, by the time the schedule opens up, the Vikings have to win 3 of these games. The Chiefs, the Bears, 49ers, and Packers. If they can find a pathway to win 3 of those, before you know it, the season isn't lost and the sky isn't falling, because the schedule really gets less daunting from November through early December. And I'll leave you with this. I've said this too much because it's so self-evident, but I swear on everything holy, if the Vikings simply fix the turnovers, they are back to being the team that you know and love from last year, winning these situational Masters games. The problem is that they're turning over the ball at a terrible clip, worse than the NFL, and even yesterday they had the 2 interceptions. So I've stopped saying this, every time I talk to somebody on a radio show, I've stopped using the turnover thing, because if they keep doing these turnovers, it's a symbol and a symptom of who they are. But I swear, if there is any way whatsoever that they can say, you know what, gentlemen, look around at each other, let's be done with these fumbles and interceptions, then this is a team that can actually win the NFC North. Problem is, there are too many turnovers through 4 games that it seems like a pattern, and I don't know if they'll fix it on the whole. But that is the only, now that they've figured out to run the football, they got Madison off the schneid in the last 2 games. The Brian Flores defense actually looked decent yesterday. They got the memo on that stuff. If they can fix the turnover thing and have it so they don't lose the turnover battle every game, the sky is the limit for them to be good. Now it's up to them and it's up to us to watch if they actually nip the turnover problem in the bud. But whenever, even after a win yesterday, I'm like, man, they would have beat the Panthers' ass if they didn't have those 2 interceptions. So we will be on anti-turnover watch. It's the only thing separating the Vikings from being a winning team, I swear. Just subtract the turnovers and look at the numbers. It's quite wild. All right. Be back later this week. I'm not sure if it's tomorrow or Wednesday. We'll talk to Josh Fry about this dub. We'll get his take on the Chiefs. It's Chiefs week. And then for your knowledge, I think it's out there in the digital stratosphere. Patrick Mahomes has not played against the Vikings. He was hurt the last time these two teams played. So the Vikings are the only team that Patrick Mahomes does not have a W over in the win column. So if his team beats the Vikings this week, he can check off every team but the Vikings. And he check off every team if they beat the Vikings and the Chiefs. Obviously, he hasn't played or beat. All right, we'll be back probably Wednesday talking with Josh Fry. Skol, baby.